Happy New Year, everybody! It's Nathan Selove with another edition of Service Dog Tales. We haven't had you on the channel for a bit, Blake. How have you been? We haven't done a Service Dog Tales in a while. It's mostly because nothing really crazy or interesting has really happened with regard to the service dog. Mostly because we haven't really gone anywhere unique in a while, and usually stuff happens when we go into unique places. However, stuff sometimes happens that I think warrants a video and a discussion. So today I want to talk about something that happened this last week. So I'm in a bookstore with Jess and Blake buying movies. Because of course that's what you do in a bookstore. And this entire time Blake is behaving very well because of course she is. She's wonderful. And we go to the checkout counter and there's this woman who is holding this little poodle. Now at this point I don't really know if it's a pet or a service dog. Some stores do allow pets in, so I try not to make assumptions when it comes to those types of things. There wasn't a vest on the dog, but that's not a legal requirement. But then the little dog starts barking at Blake. And it's one of those really high-pitched annoying barks, like whoop, whoop, whoop. And this isn't the first time that Blake's been barked at by some random dog, and she usually does pretty well with it. But it does distract her, so we're usually trained to get in between the dog and whatever happens to be causing the distraction, and just kind of get the dog's attention back on you. So I got between Blake and the other dog, and I had Blake do a sit and look at me, and she was just sitting there looking at me, very well behaved, while this little dog was and the lady who was holding the dog, which by the way, she was carrying it, it wasn't on a leash, she was carrying it, she asks Jess, "Oh, is that a real service dog?" Yup. That's such an annoying question to get. So Jess says yes, and the lady says to her dog, "Oh, well that's what you're gonna be in a few months." So at this point, she's communicating that this is a service dog in training. And so she leaves the store as the dog continues to bark at Blake all the way out. Like, the dog isn't being vicious or violent or whatever, or showing any signs of aggression, but it's still irritating and it's echoing throughout the store. And I'm thinking, I hope that there's nobody else in the store that saw Blake earlier and thinks that this barking dog is Blake. So I want to break down why I'm doing this video for you all. First off, I've often said on this channel that I am a fan of fulfilling certain standards in order to make sure that service dogs are behaving well in public, so that way it gives service dogs as a whole a good name. That's why I'm a huge fan of Assistance Dogs International, and why when people usually come to me and ask me for advice about finding a service dog, I usually direct them to that website and I encourage them to look for an agency that's specifically certified by Assistance Dogs International. That being said, I do think that there is a little bit of a problem in the service dog community of people with service dogs from agencies looking down at self-trained service dogs. Now, self-training a service dog is difficult, and it's not something that should be taken lightly. So if someone messages me and says, "Hey, I got this 5-year-old pet dog that I want to train as a service dog, do you have any suggestions?" I usually try to be realistic with them. However, there are some very successful self-trained service dogs. However, if a person is able to self-train their dog to the point where they do fulfill the behavior standards laid out by the ADA, which is namely being housebroken and not causing huge ruckus and being under control, then I think that that is perfectly great. But it is true that service dog agencies do have professional resources and experience. And they're not just good at training service dogs, but they're good at identifying which dogs are actually good enough to be service dogs. Regardless of breed, not all dogs can be service dogs. They need a certain amount of intelligence and temperament. For example, my mother uses a therapy dog for her practice, and she is wonderful. The dog's name is Abby, and she has a great temperament. But she doesn't necessarily have the intelligence to be a service dog. Blake here definitely does have temperament, and although I sometimes make fun of the fact that she can be a little bit dopey, she is pretty intelligent. She's not just good at knowing how to fulfill the cues that I give her, but she also knows how to fulfill them in a way that helps my disability. All of which brings us back to the dog in the store. Now in the state of Virginia, service dogs in training do actually have public access. Now I'm always very hesitant to accuse a handler of faking a service dog or a service dog in training. So I'm not going to do that, but what I will say is that this dog was clearly not ready to be in public. Now perhaps it was just having an off day, or perhaps it was just very early in the dog's training. However, any handler, regardless of if it's a service dog or a service dog in training, does need to acknowledge the deep responsibility it takes to handle a dog in public. Because if you're taking a dog out in public that does not have the temperament to be in public, and they encounter other service dogs, at best, they might infringe on their training. At worst, it could be dangerous to the dog. The Americans with Disabilities Act does say that a business can ask a service dog to leave if they are out of control and the owner does not take any steps to get them in control, like if they're barking or showing any signs of aggression, or if the dog is not housebroken. Functionally, these are a minimum set of behavioral standards. Maybe what this dog just needed was more training. But this interaction was not acceptable. And this woman did not seem to be taking it as seriously as she should have been. Well, that's today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this episode, please give it a like, a share, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Check out some of my other stuff. And if you want to support the channel in other ways, support me on Patreon. And you will see me in the next one.